Good morning and welcome to James Bond Radio 30 Days of SPECTRE.
Yeah.
With me is my co-host, Mr. Tom Sears. Say hello, Tom.
Hello, fella. How's it going?
It's not too bad. I'm super excited about today's sort of, what should we say? Just the material that we're going to work with today is pretty damn good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, man. The pre-title sequence of Spectre. Now, I loved it. I loved it, Chris. I loved it so hard. There's so much about this pre-title sequence. We've said we're going to keep these episodes relatively short. I think this one is going to go on all day because I love this pre-title sequence so much and so hard. What are your rough thoughts about this pre-title sequence, Chris?
Okay. Well, even before that, I think we can start with something before that.
We can.
What do we get before the pre-title sequence, which we haven't had since Die Another Day, which was obviously a crap version?
Yeah.
We've got the gun barrel back, man. The gun barrel at the start of the film.
And it's been
so good, so
needed
happy.
And so missed over the last God knows how many years. It's been 13
really
years.
Has.
The moment, the sad thing is, when that press screening happened last Wednesday and the first ones came out, some Muppet posted on Facebook immediately. Did you hear the gun barrels back at the beginning? Fuck, I didn't want to know. I wanted to go in there guessing and be like, is it? And then when it started, I'd be like, yes! So I knew it was coming, which is a shame. But there must be something said here. I'm sitting there, the logos come up, and then fades to black. Another logo, fades to black. And then it's black on the screen, Chris, and it goes, bong. Oh, and then we see the white circles move across the screen. I basically achieved orgasm before the film even started. As soon as I saw those little white spots moving along, that was it for me. That was game over straight away. It was, I was a disappointing lover, I must admit.
It was a multiple for each spot that you saw.
It was. What did you think about that gun barrel?
I thought it was fantastic because they've gone back to kind of like the classic gun barrel. So for the Daniels that we did see, they had kind of like a metallic sort of sheen to it, didn't it? Almost a 3D thing, which, it wasn't bad. But I kind of like the fact that they've gone a bit more sort of retro with the gun barrel and like the way the blood comes down. Daniels walks a lot better now than both his Quantum and his Skyfall gun barrel. This is definitely the best of those three. So yeah, I was just pumped to see it, and when I saw those dots, I was like, "Oh,
yeah," because it's funny, isn't it? Because the gun barrel was a bit different, right? In the sense that we got the bong, bong, that started when the screen's completely black, and then the spots come over, and then we get the and then he walks on. Some of the gun barrels, I'm pretty sure, start immediately with the spots with the bong. As soon as that kicks in, then the spots are moving. So that was funny. And it is a bit different. So the actual gun barrel itself has the familiar white design sort of paint, like the painted version, I suppose I would call that.
Yeah.
Like you would have right back there in Dr. No. He comes strolling across. And the differences are that I've noticed he's a lot bigger in the frame. Like the actual circle that he walks in is huge compared to the old school ones. That was generally speaking a lot smaller. He turns and fires. The drips of blood are way more in the foreground. Usually it's like the drips of blood sort of comes in the middle distance. This is almost like they're dripping over the camera like immediately. It's like one big glob comes down. And it doesn't have that old school sort of like wobble of blood coming down. And the lighting in his gun barrel as well, you kind of see by the end of it, you kind of see the reflection on the floor as well, don't you? Do you know what I mean? It's almost, it's not two-tone, but you could, like, behind him is pure brilliant white, and then the floor is like, you can see it's a slightly different sort of shade where the light's fallen on it kind of thing, which I thought was interesting. And then the other differences as well is it didn't go this, the spot usually sort of wobbles, goes down into the corner, and then it changes to whatever the scene is and opens out. We didn't get any of that, did we? It was just like fade to black.
When it did that, and it didn't open up. Initially, I was disappointed.
Yeah.
I was on a high, riding on a high from the gun barrel coming back, but it kind of disappeared, and I was like, oh man. the music cue stopped before it normally would have done.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that thing. And for like a split second, I was like, oh my God, why did they do that? That didn't make sense. And then suddenly you just heard this big, deep bass go, boof, and then the dead are alive. And it's like, and you can feel the bass inside you. And then, and it was perfect. I'm so glad they did that because that worked really well for me, I thought.
Now, so that's the gun barrel. That is a beautiful moment. Like, that is almost like the call to arms of Bond films around the world, of Bond fans around the world, of like, right, this is classic Bond. He's proper back. There's none of this prequel stuff going on this time. This is James Bond as we've always known him. And that is almost like the call to arms that's what we're dealing with. And that made me so happy, because there's just some magic about that few seconds of that gun barrel sequence that just sets you up for the rest of the film, and it tells you this is a James Bond film. This is different to anything else you've ever seen. And there it is. And seeing that makes me think, man, I have missed that so much throughout the Daniel period. I mean, I really hope they just never mess with it again and just leave it where it's always meant to have been, and just stick it at the beginning. It might even be worth going back, doing a little edit on Quantum, sticking it at the beginning anyway, doing a little edit on Skyfall.
The Quantum is the one that definitely should have had it. Casino Royale, I think it was fine. They played with the formula and it was fine. But Quantum had such a good opening scene that would have worked with the gun barrel at the start, opening up to that and sort of zoom into the tunnel across the water. That would have been perfect had they used it there. So that, I don't know why that was, for me, that's silly. And obviously if that had happened, I know Mendes mentioned about the Skyfall thing, but that could have been tweaked and it would have worked. But Casino Royale is fine. But anyway, by the by, that's happened now, but brilliant. So chuffed that it's back. And then we cut from that. I love that to a world of noise and colour and a big fuck off skeleton chomping on a cigar right in your face. And it's so good. I love it. Man, I loved it, man.
I've seen this film 3 times now, and I sit there and I watch that screen fade in where you've got the whole kind of Day of the Dead parade. And I am just blown away by that every single time. And there are 3 things that blow me away. First of all, it's just the explosion of colour and atmosphere that just happens immediately. It's just so visually delightful that I'm immediately sucked into this world, right? I love it. The other thing, and I this is actually my favourite bit of this shot, is when you see Marco Sciarra all in white, just the way he's sauntering along and the way you lock into him in the crowd instantly, the way he's walking, there's just there's something in that draws the eye, because there's other people dressed in white and stuff in a similar sort of get up to him. But just the way he's walking, there's just something so artistic and magical about that shot. And the way he's just sauntering along is fucking brilliant, and I love it. And then I love the way the camera swings down, and we get the swinging on of Daniel as he passes, and then you see Daniel just kind of look and follow him round with his gaze, kind of thing. And then you see Daniel in like the Baron Samedi style outfit with Stephanie Sigmund. Man, I mean, the whole thing is that sort of single shot vibe, which is just a work of genius. But man, I don't think there's an opening shot of a Bond film I've loved more than that. It is so amazing. I just love it. I think I can't even speak. I can't even get words out. I love it. I genuinely think there are some things in this film I love more than I've seen in any other Bond film. And that opening shot, I think, is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can't think of one opening shot in any other Bond film that matches it. You got a 4-minute single take. Okay, there might have been a couple of little camera trickery points to achieve that. But it was smooth. It was done so well. The choreography behind all of it was amazing. I love that bit as well. And it is strange, isn't it? All these people, but yet you can, you know where he is.
Yeah.
Costumes are amazing, and then obviously Bond and Estrella sort of go into that building, don't they? End up going up the stairs. Everyone's all dressed up, and you just follow, and it's just classy.
Yeah.
You're watching it, and you can't help but think, fuck, this is good stuff.
some
My
next
eyes are
level
enjoying
shit,
what they're watching. It is quality stuff.
Yeah.
And so then they go into the lift, and there's a couple of other people in the lift, and they're kind of a little bit sort of getting close to kissing, but not quite. And then she whispers something in his ear. Did you hear what that was?
No, I've tried to listen out for that several times, but it's just quite enough of a whisper that I just can't lock in with it. Yeah, I don't know what she says.
No, me neither. We'll have to nail that one down. But obviously, she produces like this key thing, and again we stay on them. They go out the lift. They go to the door, room 327, and I was trying to work out, is 327 linked to anything? Because the Thunderball rooms were, I think, 304 and 306.
Right.
Because initially I thought it might have been that, but I didn't know if there was. Strangely, have you heard of The Shining, the horror film?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So there's a room in that which is 237, and there's big sort of
conspiracy
documentaries and stuff about it. Yeah, conspiracy
stuff with all that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so this being 327, I don't know if that was any reference. I doubt it, but anyway, you never know. So they go into the hotel. And basically, I love that bit when they go into the hotel, and like he basically hangs up his hat, whatever it is, and she sort of, they're about to kiss, and he just takes off the mask. But as soon as he takes that mask off, you get a bit of the Bond theme.
Yes,
and it's so good. As soon as it happens, and you hear that, it's like that's hairs standing up sort of moment. I think
that. Oh God, I just love this opening sequence. So I'm wrestling in my mind right now because it is still early, man. It is still early days, and like we always say, all of the old Bond films have had years to sit with us, and we rank them based on how classic they are and all that kind of stuff, man. Oh, this might be my favorite pre-title sequence ever. It really might, but I can't say that yet because it's so soon, and I have to let it settle. I have to give it some time before I can give it that. Previous favourite pre-titles, Goldfinger, obviously, Living Daylights, Goldeneye, they're my big three. It might have surpassed all of them, I think. I don't know. The thing with those are, they all involve some sneaky Bond. There's no sneaky Bond in this. And, we love a bit of sneaky Bond. But I really love it, man. Obviously, that single shot thing, like you said, there is some jiggery pokery going on. Like you can sort of tell when it swings into the hotel door as they're walking up the stairs. It focuses on that poster. Something happens there a little bit. Poster on the door, and obviously, it's not actually one shot the whole time, but the way it's presented works like that.
It was amazing.
But yeah, so that moment he takes the mask off. You just get that little hint of the Bond sort of theme.
That's lovely.
Camera is on her, and then she looks up. Where are you going kind of thing.
Okay, so here's a question then.
Yeah, go on.
So Estrella is basically, as far as I take it, she's like a secret agent helping Bond. That's what I've. She obviously saw Sciarra pass and knew that was part of the mission. Right, he's there. Let's go up. She got the key for the hotel, so she knows that's part of it. So when they go in, they have a little kiss or whatever, and she's on the bed, ready, and she says to him, "Oh, where are you going?" Is that not strange in terms of, would she not have known that Bond's mission was to go and get Sciarra? Or not?
Yeah,
what do you think about
I know
that?
what you're saying there. I think there's two ways of looking at that, right? There is... So I am on the assumption that she is a fellow spy helping him out, but to, track Sciarra. One thing that we know later on, obviously, that he's gone rogue. This isn't an official mission. So we don't quite know where she's come from.
Very true, very true.
So we don't really know. But yeah, she's surprised. I don't know. That is a question that needs to be answered. I'm not sure how I feel about that at this point. But what I do love about that is, where are you going? Swings to him and he's like, won't be long. And he climbs out that window. That is almost my favourite part of this whole pre-title sequence. The way he struts along that window ledge, like he doesn't give a fuck. Yeah. And he's just walking along. He's got such a swagger on, and he's got his little gun thing and his long-range laser microphone or whatever. And as the score kicks in there and you just get the notes as he's doing it. Oh, man, I love that. It's like I've always said in Moonraker pre-titles when Jaws swoops into shot and you just get those 3 notes of the Bond theme kick in. There's some magic about those 3 notes, and that does it for me right on that sequence. When he's walking along the ledge, man, it gets me deep down in my cockles, and I love every second of it. Oh! I need to go and watch it again.
You know how they sort of say sometimes something good happens from something that isn't planned?
Yeah.
So with this particular scene, in fact, going back to the Estrella point, I think that she was there to help Bond, but obviously he didn't inform her about the whole mission.
Yeah.
So he needed her to get into the hotel room. Perhaps she thought that he was going to spy on Sciarra like later on that evening or something. So, that's maybe that's
a good point, because she does have the hotel room key, doesn't she? So maybe that is, okay.
So maybe she thought they were going to have a bit of hanky-panky before, but Bond was like, no time sort of thing. But anyway, I don't think that's a big thing. So Bond gets out, okay. Now, in the actual, during filming, Daniel Craig hurt his knee, okay? And it was over this particular filming point when he had a bad knee. And I think initially they were thinking of a lot more of a Quantum of Solace style, where he's running and doing all that sort of stuff to get to that point. But strangely, the fact that he's got this sore knee meant that he could only walk or sort of do slow gentle drops or whatever. But for me, that makes it even better because he's calm. He's just walking along. I love the way that he drops down from one little ledge to the other, down off the air conditioner, down onto the wall, onto the roof edge. He's got his gun. He's sorting his gun as he's going along, and then it gets to that point where he can see the building, and he sort of quickens his pace a little bit to duck down, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And gets the gun ready so he can use the sight. I love that bit. It's just Bond being cool. Yeah. He's just like. That is the epitome of cool.
Do you know what I think we've got here, man? Watching this film again last night, I think we've had the reboot Bond in Casino. We've had him becoming Bond in Quantum. And then weirdly, we had this aging Bond in Skyfall that was suddenly washed up all of a sudden. And we don't have any of that this time. We just have fucking prime time classic Bond. He's in his prime. There is no, he's learning the ropes. There's no, he's past it. It's like, this man is in the fucking prime of his life, and he's fucking brilliant at everything. And I love that so much, Chris. But in Austin Powers, when he first gets thawed out and he's like, I can't control the volume of my voice. That's how I feel about this. I will talk about it, and then all of a sudden I'll get this injection of something I really love about it, and my volume goes through the roof, and I get really excited. Yeah, man, that whole thing is just brilliant. I love it. That's just him walking along the ledge, that swagger, that coolness, that sort of just there's not a word to describe it. It's just so brilliant. And so he crouches down, laser microphone through the thing, and I love how they worked the Spectre ring into actually being a thing, in the sense that they do that greeting where they lift up the palm to show the octopus, and it's like the secret Mason handshake, isn't it, where you rub the knuckle with your thumb or whatever it is. I think you put your thumb over the middle knuckle, and that's supposed to be the Mason signal. It's like that is their version of it. And it's like we said ages ago, didn't we? That the Spectre needs to be like this secret Illuminati organization. And that's totally what they've gone for. And that little gesture is so cool. And I love that sequence. Now, I've got a question for you, Chris.
Yeah.
This next bit, obviously, it all kicks off, shoots through the window, all of a sudden, huge explosion. The whole building falls down, and then the roof that Bond's on starts falling down, and there's all that sort of CGI jiggery-pokery. How do you feel about that bit?
I think it's fine. I've got no problem with it at all. I love the fact that when he's spying on them, we hear about there's a stadium that they're going to blow up, and obviously they've got the suitcase of money, I assume, to pay off for that. And it looks like a done deal. And then as he blows out his cigar smoke, you just see the sight, the laser sight from the gun, and they know what it is. Bond takes it one, takes out the other. Sciarra sort of runs away, and then he shoots. What I know is obviously the suitcase isn't money. That's the bomb, isn't it? The bomb is in the suitcase, which they're going to take to steal them. So he shoots the suitcase, causes explosion. I love the bit where this building, Bond sort of gets up and he's not 100% sure what's going to happen next. Yeah. You just hear this heavy thud as the building sort of drops sort of a foot or a meter or something. And then he sort of looks up and the realization hits him of what is about to happen. Yeah. And you see sort of, couple of bricks crumbling, and it just sort of starts leaning, and he's like, ah, and then basically legs it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the building sort of collapses, a massive sort of breakaway sort of part of the wall and the roof of the building is on, and he just jumps and clasps onto that little bit of concrete. And I love that bit afterwards where he looks down and he measures it, and he's just like, yeah, that'll be all right. And he just lets go and slides his body down the incline and to drop. And I think that's great. I think that's really cool. And then you get all these sort of big boulders falling around him, and he has to sort of leap onto this tiny little ledge, and he's holding onto this sort of wall hook or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he thinks he's all right. He looks kind of chilled. And then suddenly, that breaks, and he drops down like a couple of stories and lands in the sofa.
Yeah.
And for me, that was so good. It was good comedy. It wasn't cheesy. I think it worked really well. And, you know, the way he just like looked at the hook thing, put it to one side, and I laughed my tits off. And I think everyone in the cinema enjoyed that.
Mate, I take it all back, right? One of my big worries about this film was the humour. And I heard through the grapevine that it was like, oh, there's a lot more humour in this one. And I'm like, fuck. Because Daniel can't do the humour, was how I thought, you know. I was like, apart from Casino, you know, and that line of Last Hand Nearly Killed Me, that was genius. But the humour in Skyfall really didn't sit well with me, you know. And again, I know a lot of people love that film, but for me, it's just not one of my favourites. You know, fell into some deep water. That kind of felt sort of shoehorned in. And I'm like, man, I just don't think they should do the humour with Daniel, because that's not his strong point. You know, he does the dark brooding Bond very well, and it just feels wrong for me. I take it all back, man. This film, I don't know whether it was just the lines he had to say in Skyfall or something, but this time, man, all those little humour nods, he delivers so well. And I remember seeing the trailer where M says to him, you know, Mexico City, what were you doing there? And he's like, I'm taking some overdue holiday. That's the response in the trailer. Which, have you seen the trailers yet? Have you watched them?
I have now. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh, like his delivery of that felt stiff. It didn't have the same flippancy that Connery would have had, or even Pierce would have had. And I was like, oh man, I hope it's not littered with that. And that was my worry. And obviously that scene's cut differently anyway, so that's not the response. But all of these little humorous touches just genuinely made me smile and be like, man, classic Bond is actually back now. Like this is the Bond we saw in Goldeneye. This is the Bond we saw in Spy Love Me, the one we saw in Goldfinger. This is him now. There's no fucking about. And that sofa landing, I wobbled a little bit during that scene, I must admit. Like when the house starts falling. In terms
of the CG? Or physically wobbling?
Well, ish. So the face of the building starts to fall. He turns and runs, and then the whole building starts crumbling underneath him. Very CG, obviously. And I was like, "Oh, this might be going a bit too far." Like that, you know. I felt like the top of that building would have landed and crumbled down on the roof. Did that building then need to fall apart and crumble? I was thinking, oh fuck, maybe they are pushing this a bit too far and it's a bit too much. But thankfully, that's as far as it kind of went for me. And it was like, you know, he slides down, lands on the sofa.
So cool.
I was like, oh man, that's brilliant. Like that's almost like a Roger moment in a weird way. But like, it's not a Roger moment that makes me go, oh, fuck, they've just put that in there just to like be. It was like, yeah, man, that's a cool moment. There's a moment that happens later in the film, which we can't talk about today, that I actually cheered when it happened because they handled it so well. We will talk about it later. But yeah, I love this, the landing on the sofa. I think it's brilliantly sort of balanced. It's classic Bond back with the humor, but not cheesy. I liked it. Yeah. That was a long way of saying, yeah, I like the sofa, wasn't it?
but no, it's all good. It's all good. And I agree. I think this film, obviously we'll go into it more later on, it's just hitting the nail on the head with what they were trying to do. And the humour, like you said, I think they've gone with understated and like off the cuff rather than forceful, sort of in terms of dialogue or stuff like that. Yeah. And I think that's definitely to their favour.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. So after that then, so Bond sort of gets up, he sort of walks a few paces and then sees Sciarra come out coughing. He's got blood and dust all over him. Yeah. And they eye each other. And there's a little foot chase, not too long. There's a bit of a foot chase where it's sort of running parallel. You can see each other through the sort of buildings or the ruins and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they get to the festival, don't they? And there are these girls in big, wide sort of dresses that are spinning around, and basically Sciarra's on one side of the carnival and Bond's on the other, and they're just walking down
That was a cool moment. You know what? I read about that, talking about his dodgy knee. That was another thing that they sort of put together to give him like an off day, basically. So it was originally there was going to be loads of running, and then they basically introduced all the police. They're all lined up on either side. Okay. So basically the idea is they see the police and they're like, right, okay, let's just behave ourselves for a minute. And then they both switch to walking. So it was through those shots that they basically needed something that would allow Daniel to walk instead of run. So that was why that was kind of written in, which I thought was a nice little touch. And I think that really works anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it sort of grounds it a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you know that if either of them run, the police would be, oh, what's going on here? And they would have obviously caught attention. So I really like that bit. I think that's quite cool. But it gets to the point then when they get into the crowds again. Yeah. And you kind of see Sciarra look back over his head and Bond sort of looking, and he's not quite sure what's happening. But then obviously you hear the helicopter and they glance back and they see what's happening. And then there's a run through the crowd, barging through the crowd. And it's amazing when you get that aerial shot of the helicopter above the helicopter, and you just see the floods of people filling out like the massive square there, like huge, and you see like the big massive skeletons and all this, and you just see them part so the helicopter can land. I think that's an amazing shot. It looks so good. And obviously Sciarra sort of then manages to get through the crowd. He sort of slips and falls over, and his sort of one of his mates from the helicopter goes to help him up. And just as he does that, Bond comes out, grabs one of the sort of a stick, a pole off one of the costumes, and just whacks a guy, and then leaps into the helicopter. And what do you think then? It's pretty damn good from there.
It is cool. Like that helicopter fight is so cool. I love it. I really do, because classic Bond set the bar of like stunt work in action movies, right? It was like, that was, I've said it time and time again, the barrel roll, jumping, Man with the Golden Gun, running across the crocodiles. Do you know what I mean? All done for real and amazing, and just pushing boundaries left, right, and center. That's what Bond's about. Knocking something up on a computer is not what it's about. And we've got one of those stunts again. Do you know what I mean? Even as recent as Casino with the parkour and the flipping the Aston Martin a record number of times. That's what Bond should be doing, man. And that stunt, that barrel roll stunt in the helicopter is wicked. I've never seen that in a film before, No. And it must be so hard to compose things to put in a Bond film that we've just not seen before after so many action movies have been made. And I love that fight. I love the way how it's like, as it's rocking, they grab onto the little handles, and it's like they're both like hanging out each side as it's turning over. And
that's great, yeah.
And then like the only shot I'm like, oh, that's a bit rough, is when they're both on the side, and there's one where Daniel's face has clearly been etched onto him, and it does look very computery, and it's like they probably should have just got rid of that one shot, because it didn't really do anything. It was just, but overall, I think that was brilliant. The way the helicopter's like swaying around, and the crowd are all going crazy underneath, and he's fighting the pilot as well as Sciarra at the same time, and they're like,
and it's hard hitting as well, isn't it? It's good proper hard hitting fist fights.
Yeah, well, that's it. That moment where they do the barrel roll, and they're both hanging out either side, hanging onto the handle, and then he just boots Sciarra, and he's just like, he's just gone immediately as soon as he boots him. Like, that is such a, like, that moment, it's like, whoa, like, that was such a hard hitting kick. And that whole fight sequence between the two of them is really tough, man. I loved it. Yeah. And again, that bit where it does the sort of other barrel roll, where it actually sort of flips backwards in a sense, and it pushes Bond back against it, and then it kind of comes around, and then he just sort of flies forward and gets the pilot again. I love that minute. There's a shot which is clearly CGI. When the helicopter's going up and up and up and up, and I thought they were going to do another Quantum of Solace thing, which I was like, oh no, I hope they don't do that, which they didn't. But like, there's a shot, sort of like a long distance shot of the helicopter going up, and you just see like the outline of Bond against the sun, and you see like the tails of his coat, and he's like got his arm around. That was I love that shot, man. It's clearly CGI, but I love it. I thought that worked really cool, really well.
Yeah, no, me too. And I love the bit as well when they're fighting on the ski of the helicopter on the same side. So both of them have got like one seatbelt each, so they've got one free hand punching each other, falling back, and it's just a real cool fight. And that bit where they turn and they fall and they're just holding on is great. But that bit also where they do the loop and Danny Boy's sort of it's that moment when you do a roller coaster, isn't it? When you're sort of going up and you get that moment of weightlessness, and you're just like ready, and then suddenly it comes back down, and you almost, as you're watching it in the film, you almost sort of feel yourself rise, and then come back down as the helicopter turns again, and that's brilliant. And then he obviously does the same with the pilot and like takes him out. And I love the fact that they fly out. It's not like and dropping his poof, they're gone, they're out of there, and that's really cool. And that's more realistic as well, because obviously the helicopter would be traveling at speed. So if he did knock someone out, they would just fly past. So that was cool. So then Bond's by himself, and basically the helicopter's spinning and it's heading for the ground. And you're like, no! And everyone's screaming and stuff. And then he takes the controls, and he's like, it's a little bit rattling. He does indeed, and he's holding on. And then he's like, oh, pull it back. And then the helicopter comes up, and it's all looking good. And he's looking a little bit smug, one might say, but why not? You know, he's just managed to save lots of people and beat a couple of guys in a helicopter, which is not a bad day's work, to be honest.
Yeah, man. But, I think that's. I suppose, that whole thing is just so breakneck. Do you know what I mean? It's like when the whole sequence starts, you've got that amazing shot of him walking through the crowd, and then Bond sort of tailing him up through that hotel. You've got this visual feast, and then like it's almost like I don't know, there's just so much movement in it. Like the only point where it really stops is when he's crouched down listening through the window, and you've got that little bit of dialogue. The rest of it is just this amazing sort of piece of movement where Bond's either walking through the crowds, or he's walking along the rooftops, or they're running through, or they're in the helicopter and that's moving around. It's very sort of like, I don't know, it's just visually really pleasing to me in the way it's almost like a visual ballet, Chris, for the eyeballs. And it's just from start to finish, man, I was absolutely gripped on that. Obviously, we've got to mention that he, in the fight, rips off the Spectre ring from Marco's finger. So he's got
very important point.
That's a very important point. What I found interesting was the way the sequence ends. So Bond's flying the chopper away. He turns and looks at the ring, obviously, looks at the octopus. And then it's at that point where the theme song actually starts, isn't it? It starts before the title sequence begins. That's right. And then the lyrics come in as it zooms in on the octopus. And then that's where we go into the title sequence. So I thought that was interesting because...
So you know the part where he first sees Sciarra walk into the hotel and hold up his hand, and he can see he's wearing a ring. Do you think at that point he knows it's Spectre ring, or he won't know it's Spectre, that he knows it's sort of a special... I suppose he must do, because he doesn't know it's Spectre, does he? So,
well, I don't know. It could almost... that dude, from that angle, he could have almost been doing the whole Spock salute. Do you know what I mean? He could have always been doing that. But I think what it is I think... there's almost like a shocked look on his face during that fight in the helicopter. And I think what it is he sees the design on the ring in the helicopter.
He knows something special.
And he knows there's something going, and then that links up with him seeing him through the window. And I think, because obviously usually with a ring, any design or whatever would be on the top of the finger to show it off. Yeah. So he sees it underneath, I guess that would be the thing. But yeah, man, like for me, I watched that. I've seen that pre-title sequence 3 times now. It is so good. I love it so much. It is at the very least a top 4 pre-title sequence. At the very least, I think it's higher. But I've said my previous 3: Goldfinger, Goldeneye, and Living Daylights. Love those pre-titles. This one is a banger. I love it so much. So I'm putting it at number 4 at the moment, just as a little holding place. Got to give it 6 months to a year, maybe. Okay. Come back and revisit it and see where it sits after that point, because I can't make that judgment straight out of the gate.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I think I'll do the same. And I guess for me, it's like you said, that's a really good point you made about the movement. Aside from when he crouches down and very briefly on the sofa, it is pure movement. Yeah. And it's hard not to enjoy it. It really is. Not that I didn't want to enjoy it, but that whole walking on the ledge thing, I love. There's one thing which we haven't talked about, which we definitely should talk about, and it's the music that goes along with the scene. And I think the music's brilliant. I think it gathers the sort of, gets a whole festival, you get the atmosphere going, don't you, with the music. And we mentioned the little Bond theme kicking in at certain parts as well, which is really good. And this, so I think that's something. Obviously, we're going to do an episode on the score, so we won't go too much into it now. But I think just to mention that it definitely was a good part of the score. I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me overall, it's a. I think I'd have to wait a while in comparison. My favourite pre-titles are pretty much Octopussy, Living Daylights, Goldfinger.
Yeah.
And I think this would definitely be up there. I don't know yet. Like you said, you need to take time. You need to come back and revisit it, see what you think. It's definitely one that I know I wouldn't get bored of watching. Put it that way. It's just so much to look at, isn't it? So much to look at, like in a good way. It's really, really good. Now, I know we're going to do an episode later on about the nods to previous Bonds.
Yeah.
Now, there are several nods within this pre-title sequence. Are we going to mention that now, or we'll leave?
We can have a little mention. Yeah, we can talk about that. Go on. What have you noticed? Obviously, there's a Live and Let Die connection,
huge
Samedy kind of stuff going on. But what else have you seen?
That's it. Yeah. So aside from the obvious with the skeletons and the Live and Let Die, we mentioned the sort of festival itself is very much Thunderball Drunk Canoe and Moonraker Rio Carnival. You know, Moonraker, they've got the big clowns. Here it's a big skeleton, so it's quite similar to that. I think pretty obvious one as well is Fiore's Only, when they're sort of fighting on the ski of the helicopter. That's bang out of the pre-title sequence there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I did hear a couple of strange things about that scene. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if I'm assuming it is there, but I just didn't know myself. Someone mentioned that there might be like a slight Pennywhistle on.
Yeah, do you know what? I saw that on a forum that when the helicopter does its barrel roll, apparently it does the Pennywhistle sound effect from the Man with the Golden Gun barrel roll. But I've seen it 3 times now, and I've always been like looking at the helicopter. I haven't been listening, so I can't confirm that because I just don't know. But if anybody else has heard that, then let us know on the Facebook, definitely.
Do we know? Because obviously it rolls a few times. Is it if it's the one that I think it could be, it's the one where it's just Daniel and it goes up and then he's at the back and then it goes round. That one twigs a memory as if that might have been the one with the Pennywhistle. That's
the one I'm thinking as well. The big one where it sort of vertically goes over rather than over on its side.
That kind of rings a bell. So that's quite a cool little nod, although obviously the Pennywhistle, but it's still an interesting little nod. I don't know if there's any actual music stuff from Live and Let Die in it. I heard someone else mention that, but I'm not entirely sure.
I saw that mentioned as well. That's certainly something I haven't. Because the problem is, even though we've seen the films 3 times now, there's so much to take on board.
Yeah.
Each time. And each time I watch it, I'm like, well, I'm going to look out for that this time. And I'm focused on these things. And it's so easy to miss other things. So I've certainly not spotted any Live and Let Die music cues, but maybe there is something hidden in there if it's been mentioned by someone. I don't know. Probably. But I kind of feel like the more I've thought about this film, the more layers we're going to unravel. Because when we actually talk about the nods, we're going to do a dedicated episode to the nods to previous Bonds in the 30 Days of Spectre. The more I think about those nods, there's some really, really fucking clever ones in there that you have to really unwrap. Like one in particular, which I think is just a work of genius that you just wouldn't get. But yeah, so I'm sure there's going to be more and more that kind of unravel as time goes on. Without a doubt,
There's loads. It's quite a cool little thing as well that they've done. Some people have been a little bit negative towards it and sort of saying, "Oh, all they're doing is rehashing old Bond," but they're not, because it's a different style, isn't it? They're doing their own thing and they're having little nods, but it still follows their story. It's not like they're taking that bit from there, and clunking them together. It still follows the narrative. So. I quite like it.
It is a funny one that, like, Die Another Day was a perfect example of them just cramming in as many nods to the past as they possibly could, but just in a really shitty way. Whereas this is just, I don't know, man. The more I think about it, the more this film just unravels as something that's really just fucking brilliant, man. I just love it. I really do. I love this film.
It's good.
But there we go. Yeah. So
there is another one as well. Towards the end of the helicopter fight, after he's kicked out the pilot as well, he's the gear stick's shaking and he's pulling up on it, and he manages to write it like obviously Goldeneye, the plane at the pre-titles of Goldeneye. So that's kind of like another one.
There you go. Absolutely.
I don't know if we mentioned that already or not. I just thought I'd say it just in case.
No, absolutely not. So there we go. So that is the pre-title sequence of Spectre discussed. And man, I'm a big fan of this pre-title sequence. So that about rounds out today's dose of 30 Days of Spectre. How do you feel, Chris?
Well, it's been exciting just reliving the pre-title sequence, and it's funny, isn't it? Because we're both really keen on it, but just the thought of watching it again gets me excited.
I know,
and we've seen it 3 times in like 5 days, and already I want to watch it again, and that's a pretty good sign.
When I knew you were watching it for the 3rd time the other day, when I wasn't, I was doing other things. Yeah. All I could think about, because I knew you were in the cinema watching it, and all I could think about was, I wonder what scene he's at now. I wonder what bit he's watching right now, and it was just occupying my every thought. And and then obviously I watched it again last night. And as I'm coming home today, I'm just thinking about how amazing that pre-title sequence is. And I just I don't ever want to not be watching this film. I just want to have it on all the time. So I suppose DVD Blu-ray, we're probably looking at around February time, I would imagine, late January, early February maybe. So, we just got to keep cramming in those cinema visits, I guess.
And I saw on your last one, you got a Spectre cup as well. That looked pretty cool.
Yeah, man. The Odeon, randomly, the Odeon in Andover, I ended up in. And we went to the one in Salisbury, actually, and everything was sold out. They had like individual seats for some of the late night showings. Everything was gone. So we drove to Andover and got the last 4 seats, available in that particular showing. Wow. So we managed to squeeze one in. And it was fun. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'm going to go see it again tomorrow. So there is that. That's a lot of fun. 4th viewing. I know I did Skyfall 5 times. I think I'm going to break that. I think I'm going to have to go.
Easy.
I'm going to have to go around 7, 8, maybe even 9, 10 times, I think, to see this one.
I reckon you might be breaking double figures. If it stays out as long as I think it will, we might be breaking double figures. Funnily enough, I'm watching it tomorrow as well with my housemate, so that should be really cool.
Yeah.
I don't see myself I can see myself doing at least one a week for a good few weeks.
Yeah, because you always need to catch the tail end, don't it? When it's just about to come out of the cinemas, you need to just get that one last go in.
Yeah.
So there is that, But I think this is going to be around in the cinemas for a while. Because I read that basically in the showings on Monday night when it first came, so the first showing was 7:30. In the showings for that night, basically, it made more money than Skyfall did in its entire first day of release. So that's a very, very good sign. So all signs at the moment, as far as I'm aware, point to it doing as well as, if not better than Skyfall did. So that's a good sign all round. So,
and I think also in between now and the last sort of cinema showing of it, we're bound to hear little snippets of things we've missed about, certain things to look out for. So there's always that impetus to get back in just to see if you can spot whatever it is that you're talking about.
Without doubt. All right then. So that is episode 2 of 30 Days of Spectre out of the way. Tomorrow we'll be talking about something else, and I'm very excited about it. I hope you're excited about it too. And make sure you check the JBL website, jamesbondradio.com, and the JBL Facebook and Twitter as well for the Advent calendar that is 30 Days of Spectre. So we'll have a nice little episode for you first thing tomorrow. So until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return in the morning. We'll see you then.
Night.